It's an honor to be here. It's always an honor to be at this at the Spiritual Light Center. Um, every time I've spoken here, it brings forth great feelings of gratitude in me. So thank you for having me here. Um, Today, I wanted to talk about synchronicities. How many people have had them before, by the way? Has anyone had any? Oh, guess what? We're all going to be sharing our synchronicities today. So I'm really excited. Um, but synchronicities are something that I became aware of, believe it or not until I was 30. I had always kind of passed them off as just mere coincidences. And then when I hit 30, that's when I kind of had what I would call my initial glimpse into the world of spirit. And I'm sure we can all relate. We've all had those moments where we started becoming a little bit more aware um, of a deeper reality that underlies everything. And so I wanted to talk about synchronicity today, share a couple personal ones that I've had with you all, and then talk about just what they can teach us. What do these synchronicities teach us? I would argue that they have great purpose and can help guide us on our spiritual journeys. So synchronicity is a term coined by the late psychologist Carl Jung. Have anybody heard of Carl Jung before? Right, and Carl Jung is synchronicity said to occur when an objective event meaningfully relates to one's inner state of dreaming, fantasy, or feeling. In a person's synchronicitous encounter, there is no what we might call causal connection, like A created B or A led to B. Um, there is no causal connection between the objective event and one's inner state of being. In other words, the mainstream science community cannot yet explain this phenomenon through the linear framework of cause and effect. And that's, I think, what makes synchronicity so interesting, is because in some ways they defy what the conceptions of our rational minds, right? So we're going to have some fun with this. So I just wanted to share a couple stories with you all of what I mean by synchronicity. So these are personal stories that left indelible marks on my soul, and I wanted to share with you all. One day while hiking at a park just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, I stopped along the trail to meditate. It was a beautiful day outside, and I felt connected and inspired. I sat down and fell into a deep meditation. While in this exalted state, I soaked up the afternoon sun and visualized my recent visit to the island of Maui, Hawaii, 10 months earlier. Inwardly, I recounted how that enchanted place had sprung my soul to life. I fixed my mind on one of the beautiful mountains I had climbed and visualized the infinite sea of crystal blue water to one side of the peak. Towards the opposite face of the mountain, I recalled the lush green canopy of tropical trees. There in this blissful state, I silently asked the universe, through my heart, if I was destined to someday return to Hawaii to live. As I asked this question, I continued to summon the intense feelings of connection I felt while on that mountaintop. After about 30 minutes of meditation, I came out of my trance and stood up to make my way back to the trail. However, not more than 2 steps back onto the path, I encountered the first person I had seen on the 5-mile hike. He appeared to be in his mid-30s and was 6 foot tall with short dark hair. However, it was what the man was wearing that caught my eye. He had on an orange sweatshirt with one word embroidered on it in large purple letters. I'm sure you all can guess what that is. Hawaii, right? I nearly fell over in disbelief. After a stunned couple of seconds, I introduced myself to him and asked if he had been to the island. He responded that he had gone once before and loved it. For one brief moment, I debated if I should tell him about the meditation and his special role as the outer manifestation of my inner state of feeling. But I thought that he might think I was a little bit crazy. I pondered the deeper meaning of this event on the 2-mile walk back to the car. And that was a particularly profound one because that had happened just after I had had my initial spiritual awakening, if you will. This one may appeal to people that are on that find a deep connection through the Bible. This was a particularly powerful one too. Caitlin Rose, my partner, and I had been going through a difficult ordeal. For weeks prior, the two of us were forced to vacate our cottage rental in the western North Carolina mountains, where we had only moved 3 months earlier. For 3.5 months, the two of us had wandered the trails that surrounded the mountain cabin, paid homage to a beautiful waterfall that was right outside our back door, and frequented cows that grazed in the mountain pastures. Never had either of us felt so connected to nature. However, soon after moving into the cabin, Caitlin Rose grew severely ill. We discovered that there was a massive black mold buildup in the foundation of the house, something we probably all experienced, right? Living out in a rainforest, right? We had no other choice but to abandon the dwelling and head back to the city in Nashville, Tennessee, where we had been living. The move back home was heartbreaking for the two of us. We cried and mourned the loss of our beloved mountains. To make matters worse, our landlords refused to take responsibility for her illness when we tried to recoup money for her medical costs. In short, their negative response made an unfortunate situation that much worse. Following our sudden departure from the cabin, we twice made the 5-hour drive back and forth to the mountains in the span of 3 weeks. Our hope was to find a new house. On our first trip back, we were primarily consumed with moving our belongings out of the cottage. During this 4-day period, we stayed with a friendly young couple who we met through an Airbnb website. On the second day, they learned of our desire to remain living in the mountains and offered to rent their house out to us. We were beyond ecstatic. What luck, we thought. However, it was never meant to be. Only 2 days after our return to the city, we received an email from the couple saying they couldn't rent to us after all. We were disappointed. 2 weeks later, we traveled once more to the mountains and checked out 2 rentals that we found online. Neither came as advertised. A little bit dejected, disappointed, we headed back to our hotel room and lamented our circumstances. The next morning, Rose and I had a conversation in the hotel room about all the recent hardships we had endured. We spoke of her ongoing illness due to the mold, which by this point had grown quite serious, our having to leave the mountain, and the long-term prospects of our return to the city. As we stood around the hotel room and discussed our predicament, Rose mentioned offhand how Christian missionaries have long placed Bibles in the drawers of hotel rooms, which we're all probably familiar with. She motioned for me to check the drawer. As if on cue, I picked up the Holy Bible that was in ours and I flipped it open to a random page. The section it turned to was the first page of the book of Job. We looked at each other in awe. If we needed proof from the horse's mouth that our hardships wasn't for naught, here it was. The Lord of love seemed to be speaking the very point of the legendary parable. Suffering tests your faith in God. Those who hold such faith will always be blessed and cared for. Adding to the surreal feeling of this moment was the fact that in the 3 weeks leading up to this event, we had been finding great solace in our friend's song titled Cry to Jah. The song is about Job and recounts the story of his noble encounters with hardships and suffering. Incredible, we thought. A few days later, when we recounted this miraculous event to our beautiful friends from Brevard, North Carolina, Johnny and Lynn, Johnny summed it up perfectly in one sentence, saying, "It sounds like God spoke directly to you through those pages." And this one was a particularly, last one I wanted to share. This was particularly profound. Has anyone ever been, this one happened out towards Wyabald, on a road called 316, right? It's a little old service road. And by the way, the number I know is not lost on me from a biblical standpoint, right? But it happened on Forrest Road 316, which I think is somewhat significant to the number. So it was a beautiful day outside. The birds were singing. The sun was shining brightly. and a cool autumn breeze swept across the countryside. I was hiking with my dear friend Jamie back down Forest Service Road 316, a gorgeous trail in the heart of the Natahela Forest. We had walked about 6 miles and were 20 minutes from my car when the divine fully presented itself. We had, we had stopped to smoke a bit of herb and to reflect on our inspiring journey. To commemorate the moment, I expressed to Jamie that I wished to recite a few prayers that I had compiled over the past week. The collection included sacred Buddhist, Sioux Indian, Hindu, Sufi, and Christian invocations to the divine. I opened my journal and began to read the first lines from the Buddhist loving kindness selection. May all beings be free from danger. May all beings be free from mental suffering. At the exact moment that I recited these lines, a pack of wolves began howling in unison with the prayer. The tone of their soulful expressions was both haunting and awesome. The hairs on our necks stood at full attention. It felt as though the wolves were inside our souls, playing their heart-stringed instruments. Because it was nearing sunset, I immediately placed my beloved companion, Abby, on leash and finished reciting the Buddhist prayer. I then listened, mesmerized. After a minute or two, the primal sounds of howling stopped. Jamie and I then glanced at one another in silent recognition of this divine moment. Chills went down our spines as it became evident to us that the infinite was speaking through the wolves. What were these loyal beings trying to convey? Oneness, unity, stillness, sacred earth connection. As we continued our walk back down to the car, the energy of the forest felt particularly heightened and pure. Soon the glorious sun began to set over majestic blue mountains, and I knew deep within that my home was heaven on earth. So those synchronicities, I should point out, are deeply personal to us all. You know, there are events that sometimes when we try to explain, they can be difficult to do so because they're so personal. They're so intimately personal. And I realized, and for brevity's sake, I could be here all day with synchronicities that I've experienced, but I just wanted to share three that were particularly profound. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be taken from them. Number one, what I've taken from the synchronicities that I've experienced, first and foremost, is that the universe is always speaking to us. It is always communicating with us. Even if we don't think so, it always is. And the universe, building off that, hears us, right? And that this might sound a little bit far out, but I've really come to believe through these experiences that the universe literally hears our thoughts, our intentions, feelings. It knows our hearts. And those experiences make us aware that there's like a two-way communication happening between the universe and between us, between God and between us. But really, it's not even accurate to say it's a two-way communication. That's just the way our minds process it. Really, it's all one. Of course, the living God is within us. It's here. There is no separation between the outer and the inner. But to our thinking minds, that's kind of how it appears. But nonetheless, I know from these experiences, it's made me aware that we are truly always in divine communication. And I mentioned earlier that I didn't become aware that we were in that kind of communication with the universe until I hit 30. It doesn't mean those synchronicities weren't always happening. They were always there. I was just too shut off up until then to acknowledge those forms of communication. My ego mind prevented me from realizing this heartfelt soul connection that was happening all the time with the universe and with God. And I think those synchronicities make us aware of that communication. The second thing I think we learn from these experiences is we learn to have greater faith in what I would call the divine wisdom of the universe. We can't help but become mystified that there's a greater divine intelligence, a wisdom that's also within us being communicated in those moments. Like that experience I had with the wolves. I can't help but come away from that and think, and not just think, but feel and know that those wolves were the manifestation of God in that moment, delivering its heartfelt wisdom to Jamie and I. And I think my dog Abby too also received that wisdom, right? We were all in that moment together. And I can't help but realize that those synchronicitous moments, those synchronicities, they make us honor, or they make us at least acknowledge this deeper intuitive wisdom that's always being communicated by the universe. The third thing I think we can learn from these synchronicitous moments is they make us present, right? When I think when we get to share some of our synchronicities in here, we remember them because they have a lot in common with like a mystical experience. In fact, you could say they are a form of mystical experience, and we don't forget them. These experiences I'll share with you from anywhere from 6 to 10 years ago, and I still remember them like they happened yesterday. So those moments make us more present. They help us be here now, in the words of Ram Dass, right? It makes us be present now. And what these moments also teach us is about the inherent connection in the universe. Almost every one of the encounters that I've had with these synchronicities have involved some form of deeper connection of myself to other people, to the earth, and to it all. And the Hawaii example, a complete stranger became part of my synchronicity there, kind of proving that we really are all connected. There really is no such thing as strangers, right? We're only strangers in thought. We're all actually family, and that jumped out at me, that a stranger could be part of a higher wisdom being communicated to me in that moment. In the example with the book of Job, my partner was part of that experience, showing me the unique connection that we share to be having that. And then a friend who had made music, a song having to do with that, also weaved in to the entire experience. These moments make us aware of our inherent connection to one another, to the earth, and to what we're all a part of. You want to call it the one mind, or God. Finally, these moments have the ability to humble us. They make us truly more grateful to be living. They pull us out of our rational mind. So often we're stuck in our thinking minds, right? Everybody here knows what I'm talking about. And those synchronicities, they push us out of our thinking mind, and they make us acknowledge that there may be a deeper intuitive reality that underlies everything, that we may not know exactly how it all is. They make you surrender into the possibility that there's a greater intuitive divine intelligence behind everything. They humble you. Like I said before, with the synchronicity, science hasn't been fully able to explain how these events defy the linear framework of mind, right? So they humble you, they pull you out of your rational mind and open you up to the possibility that life's miracles are happening in every moment. And just one more, I wanted to share one final synchronicity with you, and then I wanted to hear some of your all's experiences that you've had of synchronicity, if everybody is comfortable sharing. So I have one more for you. One evening, I had a vivid dream about my dear friend Austin. In it, he appeared sad and in need of someone to talk to. I could feel that he was both confused and heartbroken. The dream continued to unfold in a series of random sequences of Austin in sad and heavily depressed states. Then, very suddenly, I awoke from the dream. In that split second of waking, I reached for my cell phone to tell the time, more out of habit than anything else. The time read 7:08. At that exact moment, with the phone still in my hand, a text message came in from Austin. In the text, he asked if I could come over his house for breakfast. Later on in the day, we went for a walk together, and I learned that his girlfriend had been unfaithful to him. Later, I would recount both the dream and the divine timing of the text message to Austin. His reaction was one of bewilderment, right? Further showing that we're always one thread away from connection with one another. You know, I think we've all probably had that where somebody is really on our heart, maybe when we're in prayer, or even if we've just taken a brief moment to calm our minds and send goodwill to that person, or someone will randomly pop in your mind. It could be a friend, acquaintance, family member, and then you receive a phone call from that person, or a text message, or you run into them into the store or something. There's something deeper at work there. It's like we're all bundles of divine energy all bumping into each other. And the universe orchestrates this, the threads of connection merging paths, if you will, or threading together. But yet we're also part of that entire process too, right? That's the wonder about synchronicity. We are drawing those moments, those kinds of events. It's like it's like the universe and us are one, right? So there's a constant form of communication. So I wanted to find out if you all have experienced these moments of synchronicity. Maybe take 5 minutes or so, we probably about 10 minutes, and find out any experiences that you all have had and the kind of meaning that they held personally for you and the deeper messages you may have taken from them. Because I have a feeling that many of us in here have had these same kind of experiences that I've described right here. So thank you. We can go around, and anybody who wants to speak and share, I'd love to hear it.
Ladies first. About about 51 years ago, I was dating my husband, and I couldn't decide whether to wear a brown shoe or a white shoe. And I went out and I said, I don't know which one to wear. And he went, okay, well, I like the white ones, but don't wear those. And I went, okay. And I said, but I hope someday I have the courage to wear two different shoes if I want to. 20 years later, I came downstairs with two different shoes on. And he looks at me and I said, what do you think? And he said, you look good. Off I went. About 5 years after that, I also started with the different colored hair, the different colored earrings, and I've always worn colorful clothes. And I had a person that I really care about kind of scold me because I had met them for a seminar, and they said, you shouldn't dress like that. You're doing it for ego, and you're trying to call attention to yourself, and you really need to dress normally. And I went, okay. And I thought about it and I thought, well, I have to entertain that whether she's right or not. And, ask the universe, am I okay doing this? And then within a couple of days, I had gone to see my son in Atlanta. I was dragging my little suitcase. I'd gotten off the S-Bahn, the tube, whatever they call it there, subway. And I was lost like I usually am. And I saw a woman and her daughter walk by me, and I didn't pay them much attention. But when they came back to me, I was like, oh, and it happened to be a Black lady and a really cute, like 6 or 7 year old daughter. And she said, I don't usually do this, but my daughter, who's really shy, wants to ask you a question. And I said, okay. And she looks up at me with her beautiful little face and she goes, are you magic? And I looked, I said, yes, I am magic. And I said, and you know what? You are too. I can see magic in you. And she just beamed. And then they went off. And I thought, thank you for that answer.
Yeah, that's
just being
fantastic.
me.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. That's like a definitely an answer to your question right there. Bill, I can only imagine the wisdom that's going to come out of this. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm chomping at the bit for this one.
It's pretty bizarre. I could, I won't go on forever and ever, but there's thousands, but this happened when my father was, I found that my father had congestive heart failure and he was dying, and my mother had died 3 years before that. So I pretty well knew he wanted to die. Well, he had to go to the hospital, and I told him I would come into town and pick him up and take him to the hospital the next morning. And as we got in the car, I was telling him how I was kind of tired because some weird thing. I said, for the last 3 nights, I've just not been able to sleep in bed. The only way I could possibly sleep was laying in a recliner. And I said, every single night I had the same dream recurring, that I was under the ground digging in a tunnel that kept getting smaller and smaller. And my father was a scientist, atheist, and he suddenly says, oh, shit. And I said, what? He says, for the last 3 nights, I have had to sleep sitting up in a recliner, and I've had the exact same dream over and over.
Whoa.
Well, and he's not the type that would have ever made that up. So he went into the hospital, had quadruple bypass surgery, and through a blood clot, and was paralyzed, and we knew he was going to die. I'd been in to see him, and I asked my boss if I could. I said, I feel really compelled to go back and visit him again, and I did. And I came home that night and finally got to sleep. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I just sat bolt up in the bed, and I went into a panic and grabbed the phone and called, and my aunt answered the phone, and I heard screaming in the background, Mr. Groves, Mr. Groves, Mr. Groves. And I had called at the precise second that he died.
Whoa. Okay. Wow. That's incredibly powerful.
For real.
For real.
Yeah.
At the exact moment.
Precise second.
Wow.
And he and I did not get along.
But you did.
Wow.
But we did. We're very much alike.
Yeah,
That's probably why we didn't get along.
it's a powerful story, Bill. I bet you have many more like that. Thank you.
Hi. I believe I'm living in both a spiritual and a causal synchronicity at the same time. About 6-7 weeks ago, I attended a J.J. Hurtak conference in Black Mountain with Aklaya Akloff. And that's where I met Anita Cox. And now I'm here building her a garden. And I'm a professional astrologer, so I looked at my own chart, which I rarely do. And I'm right on my 6th Jupiter return, which means every 12 years, we start a new chapter of our life. So I've done thousands of charts, and I've found synchronicity within transits. Transits all usually create some synchronicity. Like you were 30 and you just passed your first Saturn return and you survived it because you hadn't in other lifetimes. So it's just fascinating that we're talking about this now. Thank you very much.
All these wonderful stories. These are fantastic.
My name is Betsy. We're relatively new here. Mine is also about Hawaii. When the first time I went to Hawaii was with my sister. We were going to visit her son. And I was excited because I love to travel and I love new experiences. And when the planes started approaching, I couldn't see the island yet. And I'm anxiously looking out the window and don't even notice what's physically happening to me, which is tears are streaming down my face. I mean, copious tears. And I'm someone who will cry at a preview. So, when you watch a movie and the preview comes up
3 times in a row.
whenever I feel a truth, like one of those slam you, at the heart chakra truth, I cry. And so as we're circling this island, which I've never been to, tears are streaming down my face. And I felt such an incredible connection.
It's powerful.
It's
draws you.
really, really, because it was so physical. And I was like, what's with my face? I didn't know what was happening. And that was also my first experience with scuba diving. And it happened just out of the blue. And, we got some gear and I went and I saw my first angel, which was a loggerhead turtle. And that's all I could think about when I was under the water, as it was coming directly at me with its flippers looking like angel wings. And I was just in absolute awe. Fast forward, go back a second time to complete my scuba certification, which I never had before. And we're approaching the island and I'm all excited, on vacation, and the tears start again. And I was not expecting that. And just that unbelievable connection, physical connection to this place. I cried when I left, but those were understandable. But it was the crying every time that I approached the island that's really strange to me. Kind of unexplained.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mine happened. I was at a doll club meeting in California. I collect antique dolls. And I was leaving the meeting. It's 10:30 at night. It's very dark. I'm going up this mountain road, not thinking about, and I love nature. It would just kill me to run over anything. And all of a sudden, I'm going, following the road, and there's this whole herd of deer interspersed all over. And, they got the headlights, they just froze. And I'm thinking, oh, God, I can't hit them. And God just took over my steering wheel because he just took me in and out, and I missed them all.
Wow.
And, I don't know if that's synchronous but it was a miracle. I'll never forget that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. And a lot of these, every story that's been told is like a description of a mystical experience that people are all describing. And synchronicity, even to call it a synchronicity, we really just should call them mystical experiences, really. Synchronicity is just a type of mystical experience, but certainly what everybody's describing here is a deeper form of divine communication, or even intervention, which might be more appropriate. These are powerful stories. Anybody else have anything they wanted to share before we close it up?
Thanks. I have had a best friend of 26 years and was with him the day he got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And it was very shocking. He was healthy, in good shape, had just turned 60. And we knew we would get through it together. We were inseparable. It's like two peas in a pod. No matter where Doug was, Andy was. He was one of those people that would just call you after you had gotten home to say, hey, did you make it home safely? Sure. Yes, I did. So months progressed by, and they were going to try to do the Whipple procedure to save him. And it didn't work. And he said, I think it's time to go home. We were out in Houston, Texas at MD Anderson. And he said, it's time to go home. He said, I just, I want to chill for a while. And we did. And we went back. He had his moments of not feeling so good. And there was about a 2-week stretch of time where he just like vibrantly came much alive, like he used to be, the old Andy. So he said, I want to get some things done that I need to get done. He said, I know at some point these things need to happen. And he said, I want to do my last will. I want to pick out where I'm going to be buried. I want to have, the understanding you're the executor of my estate, blah, 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 blah. So long and short, we got his will done, and he had researched for a while where he wanted to be buried. And I thought to myself, this is a little bizarre, but I'm just going to go with the flow. This is what he picked out. It is a beautiful forest in Conyers, Georgia, where there's a monastery, and these monks are there full time. And in the middle of that pine forest, there are burial sites where you can be buried, and they'll put some kind of tracker down because you're not allowed to be buried with metal or any type heavy objects. They put a tracker down, and it's just on a steel rod that goes down into the ground. And so we were walking through, and they said, we've got very few spaces left. If there's one that you see that resonates with you, let us know. And so we're walking through the woods, and he was left-handed, and he was a mechanic for Delta Airlines. He was like Mr. Delta. He loved working there. He was an engineer. And so we're walking through there. He was feeling good. And we came upon this tree, and it literally looked like a finger on the left hand was pointing straight up. And we looked down and was like, okay, well, this one is available. And right when we said that, a Delta jet flew over. And we're like, yeah, this is meant to be.
Wow.
So the story doesn't end there. We go back up to the office, and they give you like a keychain type thing that says, this is your plot number. You can keep it. And the lady said, how many would you like? And we said 2. And I said, I'll make sure your family gets, yours. And so she handed it to us, and his burial site was number 1314. That's his birthday and my birthday.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Wow. Fantastic. This is really cool. A lot of people have fantastic stories to share here.
I'm going to share one about our connection with nature. Ashley and I lived in Gainesville, Florida, in a HOA community that was a lot of trees in our neighborhood. And one of our favorite things to do was to take our dog for a walk at night, because nighttime is so peaceful, and we love seeing the moon, checking out the different phases of the moon and stuff like that. But one of the things in our neighborhood is the owls that live around that neighborhood. So we would go for our walks and look to see if we could find an owl in a tree or on top of a light pole, which almost every other night we would see one, and they would watch us and turn their head and stuff like that and then fly away. And I had developed my interpretation of an owl call, a hoot, and you would hear the owls off in the distance hooting back to us, or at least I thought they were hooting back to us. So one particular night, we were taking the dogs for a walk, and it was beautiful. It was nice and calm, and we must have just been in sync with the owls. I heard an owl way off in the distance, so I gave a call out to the owl, and then it sounded like the owl had moved closer to us, and we had reached an area of the walk where there's trees basically all around us. And I gave out another call, and an owl in this tree. This tree responded. This tree responded. This tree. We were completely surrounded by owls that had just come out to say hello to us.
That's awesome.
I want to share something that happened with me one time.
Please.
And I'm like the Pam. I am not afraid to be loud and proud when I'm out in the public. And I got hair and flashy clothes, and I'm not scared to be the center of attention. Well, one night I was out in the public. Unbeknownst to me, I was being my normal self. When it come time to go home, these two women walked up to me, an older lady and a younger one. And the younger lady said, "You don't know us, but we've been watching you all evening. My mother has cancer and it's bad. And she was watching you, and so was I, and said she was noticing you. And when it come time to go, we looked at each other, and I looked at her and I said, Mama, we're going home and we're fighting this fight together." And she said, "You have inspired us and you didn't even know it." And she said, "You've given us a reason to try." And somebody asked me, said, "Why do you act like you do in public?" I said, "Why not?" I said, "You're entertaining angels unaware." And I said, I helped somebody that I didn't even know and didn't even know I was doing that. I gave them the reason to fight something that was going to kill them. You never know.
Man, that's powerful stuff. Wow.
Oh, and if I can throw this in, sometimes when I go out with my elaborate outfits on, I look like Elton John and Shaka Khan together.
Cool.
Hey, well, thank you all. You all have been wonderful. These stories are powerful, and just further proof, everybody's stories, that these experiences are, you don't have to be an ascended master or a sage to have these experiences. They're open to us all of the time. All we have to do is just be present in the moment and be aware, and we'll acknowledge them as they happen. And I would call that divine communication, what everybody was describing. So thank you so much for having me here today. It's beyond an honor, and I have tremendous gratitude for everybody here. So thank you.